How the fellow human, and what premium tanks should everyone have in World of Tanks Blitz? That's what we're going to answer today. Now, before we go into that, this is a list of pretty much only heavy tanks, because heavy tanks are the easiest to play. If you also want a list for medium and light tanks or tank destroyer, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll make that next. Now, the first one you should have is, well, very obvious. It is the T54E2. The lowest that's been sold in the shop was 8.5k, and that's a pretty good price for this vehicle that can do pretty much anything. You got 2.3k DPM, 310 alpha damage, 0.32 accuracy, which could be better. But overall, 10 degrees of gun depression, very solid mobility, and very good armor as well. So this is the ultimate jack of all trades in World of Tanks Blitz at tier 8. And now, why tier 8? Well, tier 8 is first of all the most played tier in the game, pretty much. And you also get the most credits at the sort of least effort, because obviously at tier 10, you expect higher quality of matches. I mean, you don't get that, but you do expect higher quality of matches. Therefore, tier 10, you gotta do more damage to get the same credits, because the credit coefficients and the spending in tier 10 isn't as good. So tier 8 is where you want to make your credits, and that's what you want your premium tank for. If you have one premium tank, then it is there to make credits for you, essentially. Everything else is just fun. Now, another option that you can theoretically go for is the IS-5, if that's the only option and you are a free-to-play player. It's 1,500 gold once you reach tier 10 on the clan supply and also the personal supply. But obviously that does take quite a while to get, so if you're in the first 2,000 battles, you're already ready to get a premium tank, then that obviously takes way too long. And also the IS-5 is very horrible. So if this thing is in the shop, I do recommend picking it up. I also do recommend aiming your shots. Now, one of the downsides this vehicle does have is that the rear armor doesn't exist, and the side armor also really doesn't exist. So side scraping or reverse side scraping, like I'm doing here because I'm too lazy to turn around, doesn't really quite work too well. So that is something that you have to watch out for. Ideally, always play in a hull down position where you can hide your hull and only peek out with the turret. Now, it does have a tiny cupola on top, so keep it wiggling back and forth. Then you'll be just fine, and you get a pretty decent result out of it, just like that. Now, the second tank you should definitely have is, well, not the Object 252U, but instead the Type 57, because this vehicle has 1,900 DPM, 430 alpha damage, 0.3 accuracy, which is pretty horrible, but it has 9 degrees of gun depression, which is very impressive for a vehicle with such good turret armor like this one. The front plate is obviously pretty weak. You can pin it in the lower plate, but the mobility is a bit less than a T4E2, but it's still just about fine enough. Now, this vehicle can play hull down as well, which is something that you should learn very quickly right at the beginning, because going into the city is often the worst decision. And if you're on Himmelsdorf, you can play these little hills, you can hide the hull, you can play the turret around it, you'll be just fine. You never want to fight on flat ground. That doesn't actually help anybody. All that happens is you get shot in the face. So you don't want to do that. Ideally, you always want to play within cover, and you'll be fine. If you want to go for a side-scraping vehicle, you could consider something like a Chrysler K or even a VK90, but that is a lot more niche gameplay and definitely not for everyone. So I recommend this to go for. Now, 430 alpha damage is very good, because that means that it is above average for tier 8. This means that you have an advantage. Every time you shoot the enemy, you're going to deal more damage than they can deal to you, which is very helpful. Now, I moved over here to this side of the map, because that's another very important thing, is spot the weaknesses in the enemy defenses. Now, I could have stayed over there and fight, but I was thinking, well, these heavies, they're going to be annoying anyway, so let's take them out. And the T4 Mod 1 is doing a pretty good job over there. It's another very important thing. Have good teammates, because no good premium tank, and this is very important, no good premium tank works without a good player, right? These tanks don't carry themselves, right? Buying these vehicles, or buying any vehicle, in fact, the expectation is that you take the stats of the vehicle that it has, and then you make something useful with it. The tank can't play itself. Just like that Object 252 there, which you shouldn't really get anymore. Now, this is a good vehicle. I highly recommend picking it up, and just use that hill right there to play around, the Tiger has no chance. And I just pull back and relax, and there's nothing the Tiger can do about it. So essentially, these vehicles don't play themselves. But if you know how to play them, they're pretty much the best that you can get. And the more damage you deal, the more credits you get, the less you have to bother with playing trash. And now the ISU just shoots me on the side. But it doesn't matter. 3.5k damage. Very nice result for this vehicle. You should definitely pick up. When this thing was released, it was a absolutely horrible deal. Speaking of horrible, I have no idea what these medium tanks are doing, but let's see that for later. Now, the T-77 is a vehicle that is a lot harder to play than the previous two because it is an autoloader. So keep that in mind. This is a vehicle that you should get a lot later than the other two. Because it has a two-shot autoloader with 380 alpha damage, it is very dangerous, and it does have good-ish and good armor and mobility as well. This thing is very damn dangerous, but it's also a lot harder to play. And it isn't as hard to obtain, though, because I have a giveaway for you. At 20,000 subscribers, I will be giving away one of these. So, if you haven't subscribed already, hit that button down there. Yep, this vehicle, being an autoloader, is obviously a lot harder to play than the other two. You have to put a lot more thought into it because you have to spend 20 seconds reloading, and that time you want to have that well spent. Ideally, spend it inside a piece of cover. Well, or around a piece of cover. Because the thing is, if you play out in the open, as I said earlier, you don't win. Always play around cover, and that is especially important with an autoloader, because if you can't hide for those 20 seconds, you're free meat. And that is not good. Now, overall, this vehicle, when it came out, it was 20k gold, which is a horrible price for any vehicle. But now, they reduced it to around 10k, which is pretty much what it is going to be worth. So I can recommend picking it up for that price. Now, there are obviously cheaper vehicles, like in the recent auction, but this is the list of the best tanks that you want to have. Now, you can also get cheaper, but you don't get better, pretty much, for the most part. And that is what is important here. Because if you play a tank 10 times, it doesn't matter if it costs 3,000 gold or 10,000. You're going to waste that gold anyway. Let's speed it up a little bit here. You're going to waste that gold anyway. But if you play a tank 500 times, you want to make sure that you bought the best one. And that's what this is in terms of autoloaders. You also have the Sumo SM, but that is not quite as potent. But again, remember, take your time picking up one of these. They're harder to play. Now, the Löwe. Is it a good tank? It was at one point in 2014, before you were born. But it's still there, and it still has one massive advantage. The credit coefficient of this vehicle is absolutely insane at 185%, which means with this vehicle, you have to do quite a bit less damage to get the same credits than you have to do with other vehicles. Now, it doesn't have the mobility that the other three have, but it does have this. Pretty much one of the best deals in the entirety of the game. So if you see that, get it. Also, speaking of the mobility, it does have the mobility of the average American. So not a lot. But it is a big fat boy. Does that big fat boy have armor? Well, it doesn't have as much as it could have. It's solid, again, on the turret. Very strong turret here. Can't really pen it at all, for the most part. But the hull, very similar to the Type 57. You can pen the lower plate with pretty much any premium round you want. Also, note, all these games that you see in this video have been played in a row, just to not fluff it up, because obviously, if you present gameplay and if you present a tank, it should be authentic, rather than just picking the best games. So this is all 5 in a row, and I spoiled the 5th one, but anyway. Now, 4v2, nothing can go wrong, right? I mean, you can't just be a Progetto and sit in front of a Tortoise and a T95. That's a great idea, right? Just sit in front of them. Now, if you're playing against a slow tank destroyer, or in fact any situation like this, what you want is distance. Because by the time that T95 or Tortoise gets to you, you already have a lot of opportunities to take shots at them. Like, for example, here. So, distance can be a bit of extra armor, especially if the enemy is very slow. So you want to stay away from them, especially if it's T95. You don't want to do it like those two guys are doing and just sit straight in front of them, because that is going to hurt down the line. But 5.5k for this vehicle is an absolutely epic deal. And you get 30 days of premium as well. Watch out, though. The bundles might change in the future if you're watching this. If the bundle is back, check it. 30 days of premium, 500,000 creds. That's what has to be in there. Because if you get these thing, 5.5k gold for Löwe, 30 days of premium, and you, let's say it's the school holidays, and you play for a week, and you play 300 battles. You have a couple of million of creds that can get you 1, 2, maybe 3 whole tech trays with just that one bundle. And that is pretty good. Now, why you're sitting in front of a T95, I can't answer that question, but essentially what happens here in the end of the battle, well, I sort of get bored and I just jump on him. But once this vehicle is in the shop, you should absolutely jump on that deal as well, because it is excellent. The tank's not the best, but it does make creds. If you can play it just about fine enough, and if you can play it average, it's definitely a must-have. Now, I can't resist the urge to not put the Chieftain on any top something list. I just can't. But the thing is, there are only 2 tier 10 premium tanks, and this is the only real one. 3k DPM, 400 alpha damage, 0.3 accuracy, 10 degrees of gun depression. Very similar mobility to the TF4E2, and solid armor, especially on the turret. But again, like the TF4E2, you have a cupola, so keep moving back and forth. Keep moving, because it's a lot harder for the enemy to hit you. And obviously, if you can peek very quickly, it's another very important thing to learn. I say that every video, I know, but it's a very important thing to learn. So essentially, this vehicle is the only one of 2, well, 3. I forgot the 121B, but it doesn't matter. So the M60, pretends to be a premium tank, but it doesn't have premium credit coefficient. So there's only 2 actual tier 10 premium tanks, and this is the only good one. So kind of forced to put it on it. Now, I could have also gone with, let's say, a K91 or a Object 752 at tier 9, which are both great options as well, but the 752 is a collector, so you see the problem? Anyway, if you want me to make a collector list, put it in the comments. I'll maybe get to it in 3 years. But basically, the Chieftain has quite a bit of oomph behind it. It's not the easiest tank to play, mind you. Something like a Super Conqueror is a lot better for the beginning of tier 10, and most importantly, about tier 10 premiums and tier 10 collectors, do not get them unless you already have the tech tree counterpart. Like, if you get a Chieftain, you should have at least played something like an E50M or an M48 Patton or a T125 or something of that sort to sort of have a bit of a feel for what it's like, because you don't want to spend 30, 40, 50 euros on a vehicle that then you figure out you can't play, because there are no refunds. That is something to keep in mind as well. The second you buy the vehicle, the only value it has is the value and credits it makes and the fun it produces, and that's the thing that is important. Fun. And that's what these vehicles are as well. They're fun and they're good, which is what matters. Remember, kids, the goal of the game isn't to research everything. The goal of the game isn't to reach tier 10. The goal of the game is to have fun. And that is what these vehicles are as well. If you have the premium time, if you have these tanks, and you want to grind creds, that's what you want to go for. But if you're a medium tank player, you might not have as much fun with these tanks. So, again, put it in the comments. What list do you want next? That said, get these 5. They're definitely worth it. And see you in the next one. Goodbye.